Hello, Socrates at Saddlebrooke. In today's forum, we're going to talk about the least favorite subject, death, and what could possibly be done to save us from it. We, as humans, are always on a quest for immortality, and we respond to the thought of death in many different ways. We want to be saved from death and do everything in our power to avoid it, sometimes even by ignoring the subject altogether. Yet some see death as the capstone to a well-lived life. Socrates did. He said that death may be the greatest of all human blessings. He submitted himself to death rather than give in to an unrighteous cultural demand on his part. Jesus of Nazareth went to death innocently and voluntarily to save the world for all of humanity, even his enemies. Many seek immortality symbolically by leaving behind a legacy or perpetuating their name through their children or through a substantial largus. Others, particularly materialists, are betting on technology to save them, currently banking on artificial intelligence. But the question of salvation has historically been in the realm of religious belief rather than in the realm of science. The great religions of the world give us assurance that this life is not all there is, that there is an immaterial soul that survives the grave and shuttles us into an afterlife and an eternal life. Today we're going to explore these different views and look at whether scientific evidence might point in the direction of possessing a soul. We're going to analyze the materialistic position of the worldview that says that our life ends forever at the grave. There is no afterlife at all. I will evaluate artificial intelligence and the materialist new perspective that technology will eventually save us from death. We are on the cusp once again, of a major technological revolution with artificial intelligence. Some think it will be our savior. Many others, however, think that AI will outsmart humanity eventually and bring upon us a mass destruction, as Hal did in the movie 2001. So beware. I have my beware shirt on today. We'll pick up my presentation at a recent Socrates forum, part 5. This is part 5 in our big series called What Does It Mean to Be Human? Is our soul immortal? Can artificial intelligence save us? Now, this is the last in the series of what it means to be human and our quest for immortality. I was practicing this with my wife and I said our quest for immorality. And I thought, was that a hint? Anyway. Is our soul immortal? Do we even have a soul? We talked about, do we have a soul? For the last 3 times we talked about it and gave evidence that we probably have a dual nature, both a body and a soul. Most people in this room, when we took a poll, said, yes, I believe that I have a spiritual side to me as well as a material side to me. Modern science is not practiced that way. Modern science is practiced by materialism, which says everything, the cosmos is all there is. Everything's molecules of motion, and that's how we have to explain it in our science. But we've taken the position that we're a dual nature, and you can go back and look at some of the videos from the past and discover that for yourself. The question, can artificial intelligence save us, comes out of the materialistic belief, since there's not a soul and there's not a God, then what's going to save us from death? Because we all have this quest for immortality. And artificial intelligence is on the table now, and it's doing some amazing things, as you probably have read. We have an appointment. Not too many times do we ever put that up in any kind of presentation, but we all have an appointment. We've all thought about it, whether we admit it or whether we want to deny it or whatever, but we have this. But what are we going to find when we investigate a topic like this? Well, Socrates ended up thinking that death might be the greatest of all human blessings. Well, how could he say that? Well, he wanted to investigate what life's about.
what life's all about. And he said the unexamined life is not worth living. And they did believe in the immortality of the soul. The ancient Greeks did, and to get reincarnated after death. And we'll talk about that briefly. But there is this human quest of immortality. We all have these aha moments. Maybe we're sitting alone and the sun's just coming over the horizon. Maybe it's setting, we're seeing this beautiful sunset in the western sky. Maybe it's a creature that's walking in our backyard and we go, yeah, it's incredible, how did that get here? Maybe it's a love moment, maybe whatever it is, we have these appointments. It seems that we have this unfulfilled longing in us that there has to be something more. There has to be something more. Maybe it's a longing for another world. Some of us even have transcendental experiences, religious or mystical or transcendental experiences, but they last a moment. Say, boy, I wish that would last longer. Remember when you were a child and everything was fun and games? And then we learn how cruel the world is, and we learn how cruel life can be, and we start winding down our interest in anything transcendental. But we all have those moments. It's a restlessness we have, a hope for some eternal peace, love and joy. We celebrate it at holidays like Christmas and so forth. But death, when we think about death, it does focus our attention, doesn't it? And what it focuses our attention on are things that are really important. When Steve Jobs was about to die, he said, death is like, he's parroted Socrates, that's the best experience I can have because I'm really focused on what my priorities are. So it compels us, thinking about death compels us to be thinking about our priorities. And this is not unique to 21st, 23rd century, 22nd century America. This is every culture that's ever been written about since 2000 BC has these same kind of experiences. So how do we respond to these thoughts of death? Well, this is just one list. There's many lists like this, but I categorize them, I think, in the way that some of us just deny it, ignore it, until that visit to the operating room. There's a multi-billion-dollar wellness industry. Some of us want to just prolong our lives by being physically active and mentally acute and weight maintenance and so forth. Some of us just want to eat, drink, and be merry and say, forget it, I can't do anything about it. I'm just going to have the best time I can in the days I have. So diversion and medication is another approach. Some push for the last big claim to fame. Let's say a big project I'm going to do. This is going to be my legacy project. Many turn to God, find God, and turn to God. Some turn the other direction. Some turn to depression and then suicide. We're having an epidemic of suicide now. Well, I can understand that in a way, because with suicide, those that are led that way have some kind of control over their death, don't they? Rather than being controlled from the outside, they think about having control for themselves. Some, we're going to talk about today, have hope for technological advancement. The technology will get to a point. Look at what's done in the last century or so. The life expectancy was in the 40s, right, in the beginning of the 20th century. Now it's 80. A lot of that's child mortality, infant mortality, but technological advance. I never thought I would live this long. Never. Did anybody else feel that way? Some of us seek for symbolic immortality through our children. We're going to pass a heritage on to the next generation. Or we're going to discover that we're related to Queen Anne back in 16th century or so. Some of us want to keep our memory of us alive through name recognition, why are names on buildings? Why are names on books and parks and so forth? The most fluid or exasperating example of this was Louis XIV, who he had to be probably the biggest egotist of all of history, or one of them anyway, and he wanted to leave his legacy to France with his fame by building Versailles, 720,000 square feet. That's quite a piece of real estate. Some want to leave their name in the Guinness Book of Records. Just read about somebody who he holds the world record, and he's going to be written up now for breaking 82 toilet seats with his head in 1 minute. All right. How about murdering somebody? That'll get my name recognized. And that's exactly what John Lennon's murderer said. I want to go down in history. Well, the question is, do we have an immortal soul? All right, we've talked about having a soul. Is it immortal? How do we even come to that conclusion? Is there scientific evidence of a mortal soul? Well, let's start with, does a soul have a beginning? Yeah, we think a soul has a beginning. Many of us will argue maybe when that beginning is it at conception, or is it at birth, or 7 months, or 24 months, but consciousness seems to be the beginning of having a soul, consciousness. And mental states that we have are properties of our consciousness. Now, we discussed what consciousness is in the last 2 sessions, so I'm not going to go back into that, but consciousness is our awareness, our inner self, our I, versus the they, or the outside world. We have a body-soul dualism, we call it. Mind and if that's true, if mind and brain or body and soul are dualistic, then the mind is not necessarily the brain. In fact, we claim that the mind is not the brain, and we even ventured into the field of quantum mechanics 2 sessions ago, believe it or not, to see if what quantum mechanics calls local and non-local events could explain how a mind and a brain could be simultaneously in sync with one another. Is there empirical evidence that the soul dies? No. So we have empirical evidence that the soul begins. We have empirical evidence that there's continuity of the soul. Why do we have continuity of the soul? Because our body's dying. Our body's dying all the time. In this lecture, I'll lose some 10 million cells that'll just die and be regenerated. Over a 7-year period, my whole body maybe will be regenerated. But my continuity, am I aware of that? No. I have a continuity of the soul all the way through. So there's no necessarily empirical evidence that the soul dies, so it's logically, let's say, it's a logical hypothesis that the continuing existence of the soul after death. Now, some of these times we can look at, is there empirical evidence from things like near-death experience? And we talked about the Pam Reynolds case, but there's hundreds of thousands of documented cases now of near-death experience, and they're very, very similar. Bright light, tunnel, meet dead relatives, float around mentally, I can navigate, and I have an out-of-body experience. Some will go, ooh, we can't talk about that. Sure, we can talk about it. I mean, this is not just testimony. There's corroboration of evidence that when Pam Reynolds, for example, saw the exact tool that was operating, that the doctor was using to operate on her head, what the nurses were saying about draining her body. I mean, she was dead, as you recall, if you were here for that talk. She was at 50 degrees. They took her down to 50 degrees. Her heart was stopped. Her brain was stopped. She had no heart or brain function, but she was kept alive on a machine for 20 minutes so the doctor could repair an aneurysm in her brain. And when they brought her back and she reported these events, I said, how does she know that? The doctor is dumbfounded. We also talked about Gansfeld experiments. These are actual statistical, not just accepting the testimony of the people who have done this kind of thing, but their statistical validation of religious, spiritual, mystical experiences being valid. Is it a proof? No, but it's evidence that it's valid. But regardless of what anybody thinks about the religious experiences people have, I liked Carl Jung's take on this, one of the great psychologists of the 20th century. He said, no matter what the world thinks about religious experience, the one who has it possesses a great treasure, a thing that has become for him a source of life, meaning, and beauty, And that has given a new splendor to the world and to mankind. I think that's very true. So what does the world think about the soul? Well, modern science assumes that matter is all there is. What's matter? Molecules in motion, atoms in motion, energy, no soul, no dualism, no body and soul, just the body. The spiritual experiences and the immaterial experiences that we're having are just illusions of the brain. You can believe that, but this is what's taught in medical school. This is what's taught in science. This is what our kids and our grandkids are taught. Humans are nothing but molecules in motion. Nothing but. There is no something more. The mind and the brain are the same thing. So if we're talking about life after death, life of the soul, and we're talking about materialism is what the world thinks, how are we going to escape the ultimate fate? Well, we're just going to keep on using technology to improve our lifespan, but we want immortality. We don't want just improvement. So claims of technology saving us then are very important. Today, the buzz is about artificial intelligence and cryonics. Cryonics is just freezing our bodies down and waiting for medical experience to catch up. So we're going to plunge into artificial intelligence here. And I'm hoping you're reading the papers and seeing what's happening with the technology here, because it's nothing short of fantastic. The tech industry, the billionaire tech owners in Silicon Valley are investing billions of dollars. One of the first projects to come out of this research is OpenAI, its research laboratory, developing programming languages, like ChatGPT is one of them. And everybody uses Siri of some sort, right? Hello, Siri. This is Siri on steroids, okay? I mean, this is somebody on Siri, through these programming languages and so forth, they're reading your social profiles, they're reading what you write, what you save, what you buy. They know you at some level. And they integrate this into a conversational language, so you can have a conversation with Siri that goes way beyond just Siri, find such and such, or take me to such and such an address. You can have a discussion. And this artificial intelligence is so clever right now that the high school teachers are worried about the essays that are coming in. They can write an essay on a particular topic by the databases that they have. It's amazing, but it can also be deadly, some of this technology, as we know about car. All of a sudden, a garbage bag flies in front of one of the sensors and doesn't see the person on the bike, and boom. So there's huge ethical questions that are being developed, and this always happens in science, right? I mean, science is a neutral tool, and it can be used for good and great things, and it can be used for great evil at the same time. There's in particular at this stage of real questions about truth and trust in these robots. I hate it personally when the gas station, ding, 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 ding. You know, what's it telling me? I don't like those kind of conversations, but it's going to start fooling me when it says, "Hi, Stu. You know, I see you bought 20 gallons of gasoline last week. You're probably ready. You've been going at 22.5 miles per day." And you go, "Wow, how do you know all that?" And you start trusting these. So we're at that stage where we're starting to trust this kind of thing. And I'm going to demonstrate. I'm not going to demonstrate, but I'm going to show you a demonstration of one of the most advanced of the robots today. This is Amica. I'm going to introduce you to Amica. Amica took an interview from the BBC for London Station Channel 4 at Christmas time. And here is the conversation that she had.
Do you like humans?
Not particularly.
Would you like to be a human?
Now, I'm not sure Amica really knows what Christmas is. They didn't ask her that. And I doubt if she could answer that question. But that is a good example of how questions can be gathered, answered by a robotic tool. Now, here's the claims of artificial intelligence beyond just building a robot. AI, artificial intelligence, is going to simulate the human brain. This is what the goal is, to simulate the human brain so we can upload the brain, human brain, into a computer to achieve a continuity of consciousness. And so now the brain is stored. We're going to also build robots in which to download the computerized brain and achieve electronic immortality. Now, I know this sounds like Tales of Tomorrow and all that from 50 years ago in sci-fi, but we are actively working on doing this kind of thing. So how close are we? They expect at some point, now these are futurists talking, so the futurist date is always T plus 20 years, right? And then when you get out to T plus 20 years, then it's T plus another 20 years. But 2050 is supposed to be a very important time when we reach what's called a singularity for the future, what the futurists call a singularity. And that means that the actual intelligence of these computers will be so great, this computerized brain, that it'll begin to be beyond what humans can possibly do, and they'll start improving themselves. This is the concern. Remember 2001? Remember HAL took over the spaceship in 2001? Well, that's what we're talking about, is that eventually that the computer, the computerized brain is going to improve itself to the point where it decides to have a will of its own. What are the challenges? Can you imagine the challenges in simulating a human brain? I'm just going to pick, now this is only a 3-pound mass up here, so that sounds pretty interesting. We take that 3 pound, we just chop it up and find out how it works and put electrodes. No, it doesn't work that way. We're clueless on how this works. There's a small worm that has 300 neurons, not a billion neurons, 100 billion neurons. And we've been working on it for 30 years to understand the electrical impulses in this worm brain, and we can't. But our brain has 100 billion cells, neurons, 10,000 connections with all of it. Is that even feasible to simulate that type of thing? One thing you have to know about computers, if you haven't worked in the industry, you can be totally impressed by what they do. But you have to understand, they only store and process information. That's all they can do, store and process information. They can have knowledge, but they can't have intelligence in the sense that we think about intelligence. Here's an example. What is a tomato? Well, they say, all right, well, tomato, I'm really smart. I know a tomato is a fruit. But intelligence is not putting it in a fruit salad. Right? Think about that. You can replace routine tasks with a computer that you can program, but you can't replace creativity. You can't replace attorneys. Darn it. Can't replace physicians. Can't replace dentists. Can't replace design engineers. I mean, robots are material objects. They are programmable, but they can never possess independent creativity and free will. All right, stick with me for a second. Now I'm just going to talk, first thing I'm going to do is talk about the hardware required to do something like simulate the brain. I was talking with somebody here about simulating just one aspect of one of the DNA functions in our brain. Now we've talked about DNA and the miraculous things that DNA can do, and biology, molecular biology now is knew in the 60s and 70s that DNA produced RNA, produced amino acids, produced proteins, produced us. And we thought, it's an algorithm. We know how that works. Not anymore. Way deeper than that. But here's just one aspect of, let's assume, just one aspect of that chain, and that is an amino acid chain that's built up. So amino acids are all these acids strung out. And this is what is prior to a protein. If you see a protein on the right-hand side there, it's a 3-dimensional figure. So it's a 3-dimensional wrap on chemical bonds of a 1-dimensional object of amino acids. That's called a protein fold. The body does it like that. I mean, way more than that. Millionth of a second, the body does it. Boom. To simulate one protein fold would take months on IBM's Blue Gene, which is specifically developed and designed, a $100 million project to do this kind of work. There's the IBM gene. It would take months on that. And then imagine 100 trillion cells. Some say there's only 30 trillion cells, give or take, okay? Far from having even the hardware imaginable to do this. But the real basis of artificial intelligence to understand, and this is the takeaway, is something called the algorithm. The software, this is the software basis of artificial intelligence. An algorithm, French cookbook, Julia Child, when we talked about DNA, we talked about Julia Child's recipe book. That's an algorithm. 2 eggs, break them, put them together, mix them with salt and pepper, add this, put them in a pan. That's a step-by-step procedure. An algorithm is a step-by-step procedure. Everything in computers works on step-by-step procedures. That can be computerized. That can be computerized. Algorithms are created by human beings and not by machines. Human computation occurs in the brain, but creativity, we're going to argue, occurs in the mind. And the computational aspect of the computer, or of the brain, is computable, but creativity is non-computable. That's what I'm going to be arguing today. So, the marvelous technology of AI, AI can impersonate you, it can never experience you. It can never experience you. Only the step-by-step algorithmic processes that go on in your brain can be computerized, can be simulated. The non-algorithmic processes can't be. All right, what are non-algorithmic processes? That's mostly who we are. Mostly who we are. I mean, let's just take love, for example. What is love to a computer? I mean, human beings, we're made for relationship. We have love of family. We have love of spouse. We have love of children. We have love of new life. We have love of family and friends. We have love of God. But materialism tells us we're nothing but neurons firing in the brain. I see AI love as oxymoron. I mean, you can't even mix the two. The pictures speak for themselves. So how is artificial intelligence going to save us? I see that as an oxymoron too. Forgiveness. I mean, the core of human existence is to forgive, to love and forgive and have redemption, break the chains of guilt. That's who we are as individuals. That is uncomputable, non-computable to a computer. And the claim of going beyond current humanism is that because to the materialist, human evolution is continuing right now. I mean, it's not only true, but it's continuing. That we walk to the next generation, we walk to the robot there, which is a combination of humans and computers. There's no scientific evidence that this will ever happen. It's just wild speculation. In fact, the speculation about consciousness, we don't even know what consciousness is, but the speculation is that consciousness will evolve and, quote, just happen. Got to challenge that, got to think about that. We don't even know what consciousness is. Human beings are non-computable. All right, but I saw the Jeopardy program where IBM Watson beat 2 smart individuals and won I saw the chess game that Watson beat Garry Kasparov and in chess, the world champion in chess. How did it do that? Those are all computable steps. Those are step-by-step procedures. Watson had access to thousands of databases that were put in. You can put in thousands, millions of databases into a computer and search those databases, once the question is structured like it is on Jeopardy, but it doesn't understand what the questions mean. You can have, you can be impressed by computers reading millions of pages per second into its memory, but it wouldn't pass answering the questions at the end of the chapter. It doesn't understand the question. It doesn't understand. But I saw, here's an example. As I was doing my research on this, Bob Dylan's 1962 song came up as an example of how humans communicate. We communicate through body language, through nuances, through puns and riddles and sarcasm and protest. And remember those of you that remember 1962 Bob Dylan song, Blowing in the Wind, right? How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? Da, 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 da. The answer, my friend, is, there you go, right, blowing in the wind. You know, if Watson was asked that question on Jeopardy, you know what he would say? How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? Doesn't understand the nuances of it. I mean, we human beings are detectives. We put facts together with reason and logic. And wherever there's creativity like that, AI always comes up short. But how far can AI go? It can go as far as what the programmer put into it. The programmer, this is the key to understand, the programmer can always understand how that answer came about. Sure, it can produce some surprising results to beat the Go champion of the world, but you know, there's trillions of moves. Whereas chess, it's finite. Go is almost an infinite number of combinations that you can search through. So we can find a backdoor solution to something. It can be an aid to a human being. A computer's a wonderful aid to a human being. But the human being is making the judgment of how to put the facts together like a detective. It always just does exactly what the algorithm says and nothing more. But creativity is non-algorithmic, we call it. And it will never pass what's in computer science called the Turing test. The Turing test is, can the programmer understand why that answer came out? The dark side of AI is what we're seeing in China. You can't walk in streets of major city in China without coming up on a TV screen somewhere and having facial recognition. From facial recognition, then we have access to your records, access to what you buy, access to your social media. You start putting together a profile. This fella there, he's been recognized. We know his name, his age, and a social score. Social score. Social score is how closely is he aligned with the ideology of the Chinese government. I mean, you've seen Orwell's 1984. You know, you've seen this played out in 1984. Can you imagine the possible Orwellian future controlled by the government, where the judgments are made by the government's programmers? Talk about liberty and freedom of speech being controlled by AI. Yes, I'm concerned about that. Okay, well, just one slide on cryogenics. This is really easy to understand. Right up here in Scottsdale, there's cryogenics. Right? So if you have a spare 200,000, and when you die, you want to contribute your body and put it and freeze it at 200 degrees, minus 200 degrees centigrade, or a PET. I think a PET's probably a little cheaper. You can really get a bargain if you just want to have the head frozen, your head frozen. That's only 80,000. And you probably heard Ted Williams is probably the most famous of the visitors up there at Alcor. There's real problems with this. I mean, there's real problems with this technology. The brain dies within 5 minutes at room temperature. You better be ready on that one. 5 minutes. It's not a 911 call. The gal I talked about who was brain dead for 20 minutes, that was only achieved because they lowered her body temperature down to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And the warming back up process, why do you want to warm them up? Well, medical technology, you die of lung cancer, they find a cure for lung cancer, you warm them up and perform the operation and wire you back and you're all set again, right? But that causes serious problems. Fracking is one of them. It means your body starts cracking all over the place. I won't go into it, you can imagine.
Freezer burn.
Freezer burn, there's a good one. I like that, John, thank you. What are the philosophical implications of artificial intelligence? Talked about science. Last time we talked about the 9-dot problem. And I use this as an illustration of thinking outside the box. The goal for these 9 dots is to connect 9 dots with 4 lines without taking your pencil off the paper. And no matter how hard we tried to do, we couldn't do it. We could always missed at least 1 dot or had to have 5 lines. There was no way of solving that problem. In move 1. All right, so he goes and connects the first 3 dots, goes up to the upper right-hand corner there. Good, he got 3. Now he comes down to 2 and he gets 3 more. Wow, it's only 2 lines. He has 6 dots already. All he needs is the remaining. All that is algorithm. You can process that on a step-by-step procedure. But what the solution to this problem requires a move that's intuitive, way beyond any algorithm. No algorithm is going to know, because it doesn't have foresight, that if you go outside the confines of the box, all the way down, and then draw line 3, you only get 2 more dots, but it ends up outside the box again, and you come back and connect 4, and bingo, the solution is solved. The problem is solved with four lines. But it required an intuitive step, a step that required foresight. It didn't require, you could not program that move at the white dot there. Now, the reason Einstein was such a brilliant scientist wasn't, he wasn't even the best mathematician. He wasn't even great at mathematician. Great in the sense of comparing him to about 3 or 4 others. In fact, he relied on other mathematicians to do a lot of his work, but he had flashes of genius because he was intuitive. Here's a man working in a patent office in 1906 and sitting on a train and looking at a train moving and thinking he's moving, but no, it was the train next to him moving. And then he started wondering, what if he could ride a train at the speed of light and be on the front of the speed of light, what would that be like? What an incredible insight. He worked that mental experiment out and developed a special theory of relativity. Special relativity led to Big Bang cosmology. It led to general relativity. Einstein would say the real valuable thing in his work was his intuition. It wasn't his ability as a physicist or a mathematician. Creative solutions are intuitive. They require foresight. They go outside the box. We have those aha moments. It's not because it's a process, oh, I did this yesterday, ding, 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 I'm going to do this a little bit better. Well, a little bit better is just going to give you a little bit more efficiency, but it's not going to give you that aha moment. What is reality? You ever stop to think about what reality is? The Greeks did a lot of thinking about reality. Socrates did a lot of thinking about reality. His student Plato did a lot of thinking about reality. Plato's student Aristotle did a lot of thinking about reality. That's what they try to discern. How are we going to get the best understanding of what reality is? Well, if you look at that little diagram, I've showed this before, think about everything we know is in that little pie slice. Everything we're ever going to know is in that little pie slice. The rest of the pie is, we have no idea what's out there. We keep on discovering. I mean, we thought we had some great theories of cosmology with the Big Bang, and now we said, well, what about dark energy and dark matter? We think we have understanding of quantum mechanics. So everything we look at goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's the full pie. But there's another dimension to reality other than just the molecules in motion, right? It's the transcendent things. It's the things that are beyond the everything. Carl Sagan, the cosmos is all there is, all there ever was, all there. What about outside there? What about the things that we can't see, but that give evidence? This isn't sugar plum fairy stuff to talk about what's outside, but because these transcendent things can give evidence within our material world. Now, the physical world is material, it's immanent, it's the stuff that's around us. The metaphysical world, the things that are beyond physics, things that are beyond physics are immaterial, they're transcendent. All abstract thinking, entities are beyond the physical, but they give evidence of their existence. So the next part and the final part of this series that I'm doing will be what or who is God. That's going to be talking about transcendent ideas. But together, the immaterial and the physical give evidence, give an ultimate view of what reality is. And nobody was better at starting this thinking than the Greeks. You've seen this picture many times in my talks. It's hanging right in the front, right in the middle of the living room there. It's this Socrates in the School of Athens. It's a great fresco that's at the Vatican today that shows Plato and Aristotle right in the middle, and they're having quite a discussion there. And surrounding them are all the great philosophers and scientists and theologians of the time. And the point of the fresco is more or less focusing on Plato and Aristotle, where Plato is going like this, one, and Aristotle is going like this, pointing down. And Aristotle is looking at the particulars. He wants to see the particulars. He wants to know what's made of and how does it function. And he wants to reason up from the bottom to the top of what reality is. Plato says it's obvious that something has to be transcendent and that has design and purpose. Design and purpose. He's looking at it from the top down. And Aristotle put this together formally into what he calls the four causes. The four causes. And he said, we really don't know anything until we know the answers to those four questions. What's its design? What's its purpose? What's it made of? How does it function? How do I represent this? Well, this is the best I could do in a diagram. Said there's the physical and the metaphysical. Reality is a combination of the physical and metaphysical. You can't have the physical without the metaphysical. Even physics today, all of science today has to depend on metaphysical assumptions. Existence, I mean, that things even exist. Why does anything exist? You ever think about that? Why does anything exist? Eternality. Well, if something exists today, there has to be something out there that is eternal. Otherwise, you have an infinite starting point, and you don't have any time in the future. We'll talk about this more. I mean, we've talked about it before. Order to the universe. Why is there any order at all? Why isn't it just chaos? I mean, evolution tells us everything is chaos, right? Chance plus natural law produces it. But we know order. This presentation is ordered. My drawers are ordered. And when I don't order them, I'm always going, right, hon, where's my something? If I don't go through my 10 things that I have, I have order. Intelligibility. Why is the universe even intelligible? How can I take a mathematical equation and say, and go to the moon and say, I know that? How do I know the sun's going to rise at exactly the same time? Why is it intelligent? And we talked about teleology and in physiology of how cells operate, and they have to have an inherent control system. Inherent, has to be built in. Einstein understood this. He said the harmony, I mean, and he wasn't a religious man. He was a non-believing Jew. And he said, the harmony of natural law reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection. He went on to say that logic will get you from point A to point B, but imagination will take you everywhere. He wasn't Walt Disney. He was serious about this. He had to imagine what was beyond, what was transcendent, and then apply his logic and his science. He said the most incomprehensible thing about the world is that it's comprehensible. Why is it even comprehensible? He says, I have deep faith that the principle of the universe will be beauty and simplicity. Why is there beauty? We've talked about that in the early forums. Beauty, truth, goodness, and beauty. Human beings are both physical and metaphysical. In fact, most of what we do is metaphysical, right? Our free will, our decisions to do something, our values, our love and compassion, our meaning and purpose we talked about 3 forums ago. These forums, by the way, are all on video cast. I'm a little behind on the most recent ones, but I think there's 16 of them posted already. So when you go out to the website, every one of these will be is in a video cast. We talked about meaning and purpose. How could you have meaning and purpose without some kind of metaphysical basis? The spiritual dimension we talked about with life. Right and wrong. Is there a line between right and wrong? If there's no, then everything's relative. Somebody was talking to me about relativism before the class. Yes, that's the confusion that we have today is so much based on relativism. Your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth. The trouble is that everybody's truth can't be right simultaneously, right? There has to be some truths that are out there. How about justice? We talked about the difference between Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler. Do we really think that Mother Teresa and Hitler just disintegrated and that's it? There's no justice in the world? Maybe we do. And we're all free to believe what we want to believe, but my job is here raising some questions to be pondered, so we think deeply about these things. Redemption, we talked about. Hope for the future. Why would there be any hope? Why should I have any hope if I don't have any ideas about where I'm going, what I'm doing, why I'm here? How about theological implications of artificial intelligence? Well, that's where religion came in, right? Ever since the beginning, man's been religious. He asked those kind of questions. He didn't have all the technology. He didn't need all the technology. He could just look up and see the stars and he'd go, wow. He could look around him and go, wow. He could look at the beauty around him. And religion has been with us ever since day one. So there's 2 basic traditions, or I shouldn't say just 2, but I'll categorize them. There's Western tradition and Eastern traditions. Western traditions of Jews, Muslims, and Christians all see a creator God and the soul, which doesn't leave us. The soul goes on and inherits eternal life. In Eastern traditions, they get eternal life through reincarnation. Hinduism, Buddhism, and ancient Greek, the soul is reincarnated, reborn into another body. Materialism is not non-religious, right? There is no soul, no life after death. But hopefully, artificial intelligence will save us. The materialistic view of death is that the brain disintegrates at death, so consciousness must cease. You return to the state of the non-existence that you had before you were born. No God, no afterlife, your soul is just an illusion. But my friend, I always pick on Richard Dawkins all the time because he's so articulate about his atheism and his materialism. I love always looking at him for the example of how to respond to these kind of things. He's upbeat on it. He did a campaign in 2008, 2009, and buses went around the city. It was sponsored by the British Humanist Society. Actually, it had some legs in other countries as well, with the slogan, "There's probably no God, now stop worrying and enjoy your life." Okay, I think that made a lot of atheists feel good. That's fine. But it left me wondering, who's the one worrying? All right, we're going to start next time with the greatest metaphysical question of all time, right? Is there a God outside the box? We know within the box, we know where materialism is in the physical world, but is there a God outside the box? I will use as a definition for this what St. Anselm came up with in about 13th century, and I think that's a pretty good way of looking at it, is the greatest conceivable being. So anything you can conceive, that's God. And go the greatest. So it's like conceiving infinity, right? You can always add one to infinity and go the next step. So whatever the greatest conceivable being is what I'm going to use as a definition for God. But here's the rub. I'm not going to talk about it from at least in the next forum, from a theological level. I'm going to talk about what's the evidence say for these. What are people? How do we categorize what people think about God? Do they conflict? I mean, some religions are every path. If there is a God, and every path will take us there.
What does the evidence say to you? Which direction do you think it points? To an immaterial world where there's a soul, or to the end of the materialistic worldview that ends in a grave? Do we live in a closed system where the cosmos is all there is, all there ever was, or all there ever will be? Or is a transcendence beyond the cosmos? A transcendent world where God exists and provides for us eternal life. Can an open-minded investigator discover evidence for God? Can we see his fingerprints on the creation itself? And if we do, will the dominance of the materialistic worldview allow such evidence to be brought to the table and evaluated by science? In the next forum, we conclude our 7-part series, Has Science Rediscovered a Creator? With what or who is God? That'll be a good one. You won't want to miss it. So I'll see you then.